have Michael Schunke and Josie Gluck here to make a beautiful thing for you today, a bowl. Let's give them a big round of applause. Thank you very much. Helping them out as well, they have Jen Ellick here, and then on our, yes, you couldn't applaud for every single person I speak about, definitely. On our team here, helping them out at the Corning Museum of Glass Hot Glass Show, we do have Jeff Mack, and we have George Kennard as well, and awesome. I'm Katie. I'll be helping you all along here, be narrating this process for you and answering any questions you may have here in-house and, of course, online. So go ahead and let us know as we go along. But we are very excited for this demonstration. I believe the last time that Michael Schunke was here demonstrating must have been maybe about 3 or 4 years ago. But he is back. 2019, yeah. Great. So Michael and Josie right now are teaching a class next door at the studio. It is a goblet class, and I believe some of the students are here in the audience. That is very fitting for these demonstrations. So yeah, the class is going well. I believe Janelic is their TA for these 2 weeks that they're there. They're here, and that's quite amazing. So all three of these, we have a powerhouse happening. It's going to be really fun. So what we've got so far happening here, we have a couple of cups that are sitting in an oven that have been preheated throughout the day, one of which is attached to the pipe that Jen currently has here at the workbench. That is a cup full of marinis. These marinis were pulled from white canes. And so to make a marini or to make cane, we have to back this way up and talk about color. And so what we first start, we're going to back up even from that too. We're going to start talking about where we get our glass from, straight from our oven to begin any process. We start from our furnace here in the middle of the studio. That furnace is at 2,100 degrees Fahrenheit, and at that temperature, glass moves like honey. It glows. It's a very beautiful and fluid material. We start with clear glass so we can add color to it later on, so we don't have an entire furnace full of just one tank of one particular color, although in some instances, of course, you can have that in your hot shop. To buy glass color, you want to go to glasscolor.com or a few other places, but you can buy glass color in a few different forms, one of which is color bar, and that's what I have here in my hand. This color bar can then be made into cane. So this is pure glass color here. You can add it to the end of an iron. You can coat that with clear glass, and then you can pull that chunk of glass really, really thin to about the diameter of a pencil, and then you can chop that up into canes that are maybe 5 or 6 inches long. Those canes traditionally are rolled up into a bubble, or you can take those canes, you can line them up or bundle them up and pull that into marini. So you'll pull that into a longer kind of, pull that into that longer stripe, and then you can then chunk that up into marinis, which are smaller. They're not as long as canes are. They're smaller kind of cuts, like slices of bread. And so I believe that's what this is here. So a lot of those marinis can then be pressed together and then added into, or kind of rolled up, or there's many different ways of doing that. So we have a cup full of these little marinis. So sometime we'll probably try to get a little close-up, a little view of those marinis, although they're very dense. It's a very dense bundle or roll-up of these marinis. And so what you're seeing in this white color is actually those tiny, tiny lines of cane, the marinis, essentially. Here we're going in for a gather of this glass. So inside that furnace is where all of our clear glass sits. And so we've gathered out that secondary layer of glass color, so giving this a clear strip of clear glass on the outside of that marini bundle there, marini cup. Not a bundle, a cup. And so we're going to build this up. We still have another cup to add to this. And so it depends on how many gathers we're going to get. But this is gather number, I would say 2. So that first cup of marini is number 1. This is gather number 2. Straight out of that oven, like I mentioned earlier, our glass moves like honey. It's very fluid. So the first thing that Michael did was he poured some of the glass off of the bubble there and into that bucket of water. That water is just going to cool our glass. That glass is something we can throw right back into our oven and reuse the next day if we feel like reusing that glass. But essentially, Michael didn't want all that glass to use. So we gathered some of that out, let some of that pour off into the bucket, and we're going to use this glass here. We might do this a few more times. The process of that was, we just saw, is called strip gathering. So we want to smooth this out here. The team's working together to even everything out quite a bit. Now what Michael here is using, we traditionally use newspaper to cool and shape the glass. At this point we use wet newspaper, which really works quite well. The fibers in that newspaper doesn't let heat really transfer onto our fingers very much, and it's a flexible material we can use to cool and shape that glass. What Michael was using precisely there is a very special kind of newer addition to the glass studio, which is a woven graphite pad. So it's woven graphite that kind of is a substitute for newspaper. We did slides of newspaper in there, so that's what the substance of that is, but it's basically a woven graphite cover that covers, you could even use cloth inside there. The heat doesn't transfer through that either, but it kind of is a nice substitute. So maybe one day if newspaper goes away, which who knows, that would be a good substitute. But otherwise, I think paper's gonna stick around, we'll see. So in between these gathers, we really want to let our glass cool down. We really want it to kind of stop moving. That happens right around about 1,000 degrees. So once it does stop moving, we can go back into our furnace and get an extra layer of glass to coat the surface. And this is going to be a really large bowl. We have this mold here on the floor. It's covered in a trash bag. We're keeping it wet. We're keeping it moist, I believe. I believe it's a cork mold. We'll see as we go. We are going to want to have a bowl that's going to cover that whole thing. So we've got a lot of glass to still build up. So letting the glass cool here, also keeping it on center. We're always turning, always making sure this glass stays on center and level. And then we dive back into our furnace. Can we roll the gathering animation? I think that might be a nice time to do that. So seeing inside of our furnace what gathering looks like. For those of you here, you can see once again that pouring of that liquid glass coming off of that bubble there. But inside of our furnace, we have a big ceramic cereal bowl called a crucible, where all of our glass is being stored. We go down into that furnace, turn in one direction, and bring out that second layer. This is actually, our third layer. Layer number 3. So we can maybe keep count of that today, of all the layers that we are going to add on. We still have another cup of marinis to stuff. So we'll see that here in a moment. First thing Michael does after stripping some of that glass off is he goes to our pipe cooler. So this is kind of a trough that we can pump. It's something we don't have to plug in, which is really great for this invention here, this tool. We can pump this water up to this trough here, and that stuff cools, this water cools the pipe down. So after diving into that furnace and heating that pipe up, we can come back to this pipe cooler and cool it down quite a bit. There's an area of the pipe about a foot away from where our glass is located that just gets too hot for us to handle. Now, it is still safe for us, of course, to work in this setting without gloves. And using that pipe there, we just don't put our hand in that area. It's kind of like a dance. We just learn to not put our hands on that part of the pipe. That's one of the first things you learn as a glassmaker, is to avoid that area, to maybe hold the back of the pipe also. There's ways of getting in and out of the workbench, way of getting in and out of the reheating chamber. Just not putting your hands in that area. When the glass gets bigger, you might see Michael and team suit up with a couple pairs of gloves. Oh, here we go for the stuff. So down into our mold, or down into our oven with our stuffed cup. We're stuffing that bubble down into this cup here. This cup's probably around about 1,100 degrees. It's important to not hit the sides as we go in, and we did that beautifully. Let's give the team a big round of applause for that. Very nice. So this is pre-made. Michael made this cup already with all those marinis. Put this into the oven so it could come up in time to be stuffed by the other cup. So now we have that on the other side there. So it looked like the inside was one color and the outside was another. So I believe those white marinis are once again on the outside. However, those white marinis previously had been stuffed into another color cup. That's what I might suffice to say there. And now since this cup has just come out of a colder oven, colder-ish, of course cold being relative, 1,100 degrees is a bit low for us. When around about 1,000 degrees, glass stops moving. So that cup is cold. We want to heat it up a little extra with this torch. And Michael is actually heating it up in a very particular area. The tip of this bubble inside of this oven is going to get hotter faster than the rest of the piece. So the first thing inside of our reheating chamber and the last thing out of our reheating chamber is the tip of that bubble. Therefore, that's why it gets hotter faster. So it's easier or nicer to heat up the back side of this bubble out here using a torch, so the whole thing will start to move and jive all at the same temperature and at a faster rate. So we'll start to move in and get some of that glass nice and warm. Do you have any questions here in the audience so far? Looks like we're doing all right. Jen here will roll this bit of glass on this table here called the marver. We're going to be cooling this, shaping it as well. That also helps line that cup up with the rest of the bubble. Michael is capping the end with his hand. That's so that our bubble doesn't deflate as we roll it along this table. Really pushing that cup back onto the bubble there. We really want to work the heat back into this oven, or into this bubble, so back into our oven we go for another reheat. Do we know what the outside cup color is for this cup? Sea green, tourmaline. Okay, awesome. Kind of like a grayish turquoise, maybe. Ish. Transparent. Awesome. Yeah. All right. It takes a lot of control to marve glass here on this marver, to turn this. If you kind of just let it sit, the glass is going to deflate a little bit. It's going to flatten out on that side. So a lot of it is balancing. You're holding the glass as you're rolling along on that table. I'd say this glass is getting up there in weight. It's probably right around about maybe 7 or 8 pounds on the end of an iron too. So you're holding an iron. This iron is a very thick iron because this glass is a lot of glass. So we need a thicker iron to be able to hold this glass and to be able to use it without bending the iron or wearing out our pipe turners. So the iron itself might weigh about 3 or 4 or 5 pounds, depends. The iron especially seems a little bit heavier. And then you add that 7 or 8 pounds of glass on the end, so we're already right around about 15 pounds. And then that 15 pounds-ish, some of it's here right where our core is, but the rest of it's off the end of an iron, so it's maybe 2 or 3 feet away from us. So that adds maybe 7 or 8 more pounds. So the more glass we have, the heavier it's going to get. And of course, we have master glass makers here that are going to make this look really easy. Glass making is a very challenging thing to do. It takes a long time to get really good at glass making. I believe a lot of us here have lots and lots of experience here. And so Michael and Josie have been working together for about 10 years, actually about 12 years, excuse me. They've been working together since 2010. The two of them have a company together. It's called Vetrovero, and you can go to vetrovero.com, or you can go to Instagram at Vetrovero and check out their Instagram. Some of my favorite things being made. I just love that line. So both of those two have gone to school for glass making. And so Michael Schunke has gone to Tyler, a school for glass making, and RISD as well. And Josie also has a master's of fine arts. She got that from the Art Institute of Chicago. Janelle here, their assistant for this demo. She got her degree right here in New York State. She actually went to Alfred. So she got a Bachelor of Fine Arts at Alfred State University. So that's one way you can get involved in glass making. If anybody ever has the chance to get involved in glass making ever, I highly recommend it, obviously. It's so much fun. You can go to college to do this. You can take beginning glassblowing classes. You could even do that next door here at the studio. That's what Josie and Michael are doing. They're not teaching a beginning glassblowing class. They're teaching probably an advanced or intermediate glassblowing class. You can start by taking a class. So if anybody is interested, If you want to do this for a career, you could start by going to college. You could also get a job as a glassmaker. A lot of places will train you up to become a wonderful, amazing glassmaker. So there are a lot of venues and avenues. All right, so they puffed this up a little bit. There's a bit of discussion going on. They're going to want to gather over this at least a couple of times. And so I heard Michael say, I don't want to blow this up too much. If we get the glass too thin, and then put that glass down into an oven with 1,000 pounds of glass in it, and try to turn that really thin glass in a really hot pool of glass, the glass is going to start to twist inside that. We're not going to be able to even bring it out sometimes. So we let this cool quite a bit. We also let it stay thick. We don't blow it out. If it gets too thin, you won't be able to get any glass over the top. So we'll keep it thick.
Michael makes the glass a little cold, George. George likes it a little bit. That way you can have it.
So here's another part where we're gonna let this glass chill. You can see the heat coming from this when we use some of these darker colors on the outside of this glass, or in the glass, I should say. You can see a little bit of that glow. White is a really good representation of itself when it's hot. Other colors will look orange. I mean, white sometimes does look really orange when it's really, really hot. But other colors, they all look orange. And some of them don't even look like themselves even when they cool down a little bit. Some glass does. Glass colors do. So sometimes you want to wait until the glass totally cools down to see that glass color. But you never do. We never let our glass get below about 900 degrees while we're working. If it does get too cold, the glass, it will crack and it will break even during a demonstration. So we have to always be mindful of the temperature. As we're letting it cool out here, if we just let it get too cold, we could crack the glass. So, although we're chatting and having a second to maybe relax for maybe a moment, we're thinking still about how hot that glass is. If we totally forget and let it get too cold, it will crack and it will break. Don't worry, remember, we've got a lot of professionals here. We're gonna go over to the pipe cooler, cool this down. That gives us more leverage, especially when going in to a gather. To get a gather, we want a little extra leverage on the pipe, and then maybe we'll come right back out after that gather. Some of you here in-house can see that steam rising from the pipe. It shows you that where it's too hot. All right. All right, here we go, into that furnace. Oh, George is gonna rake it first. Raking the furnace means we take that that rake that George has in his hand, and we push that top layer away. You can I always like to think of it like honey. So push that top layer of honey away, and then the bottom, that layer underneath it, is way cleaner. So it gets rid of a lot of the bubbles. So there we go. He just submerges that beneath the level. He's turning. He lines up that gather nicely so he doesn't go over where that gather ends. So we'll just get it around where that glass is, and look at all of that glass. Very nice. It's heavy. So Josie's here with a paddle in her right hand to help leverage that back up. And Michael's going to start to do some surgery here. He sees some bubbles. He's got a pair of what we call bubble shears. Those are just big scissors. He pulls the bubble out and clips that free. All the while you see he's turning, rotating, making sure everything stays as even as possible while we're doing this. The glass is so stringy, it just falls right off. Bubbles in a piece like this don't look amazing. Bubbles in a piece where they're in a nice pattern, they look okay, they look nice. Of course, if they're in a nice pattern. Sometimes you can also add lots of bubbles into a piece, and the multitude of them might be a nice pattern in the piece. But if you have this beautiful bowl and then it has all these beautiful patterns of the Marini that you see, of all the color that he's put into it, and then there's this tiny bubble, it kind of just throws it off. So we like to dig those out, do the best we can to get rid of that. Go back to our pipe cooler. Bubbles can also threaten the integrity of the piece you have. If you kind of catch a really big bubble, that might cause the piece to crack later on.
All right, George.
To avoid bubbles in your tank, the raking is a really good thing. Sometimes, you might catch a few still. That's okay. So we're going to go into our oven. It is a little lumpy. It's because we took time out to pull some of those bubbles out. We'll smooth it out here in a bit, even everything out. We need to heat that up first. In order to get the glass to move, we've got to heat it up. So the type of glass that we're using here in the studio is called soda lime glass. It's the most popular type of glass in the world. To make soda lime glass, you need 3 main ingredients. You need sand. The type of sand that we use is called silica sand. And it's a sand with a high content of silica. It's clean, it's refined, it's cleared out of all the imperfections that a lot of our sand that naturally occurs has.
Thank you, sir.
So that's 70% of the mixture. To add to that, you need to what we'd like to add to our glass is soda ash. And soda ash, it lowers the melting point of our glass. It's the flux in the glass. So we can melt it at this lower temperature. Without soda ash, or with a little bit less soda ash or less flux, it might melt at 3,000. It might melt at 3,500, even 4,000 degrees. And then to that ingredient list, you add limestone. And limestone is a stabilizer. There's 10% limestone in our glass, so 20% soda ash, 10% limestone. Limestone stabilizes it. So without limestone, if you add moisture to the glass, it will start to decay or kind of degrade and become water soluble. And to make color, you take the same ingredients that I just listed. Before you melt it, you add a metal oxide into the material. So for a light blue, you'd add copper. For a dark blue, you would add cobalt. For a purple, a manganese. For a green, an iron. Any metal you can think of, you add it into glass, and it will change the color. Let's oxidize it first. You can even use chloride. George here has that bubble now. He's putting it into our large or wooden scoop tool here, this block. This one is too heavy to hold with one hand. So we're putting it into this block here. George is turning. George is spraying that kind of smoke away from George as he turns, and Josie's holding on to it. Look at this. 3 people we are needed to block this amount of glass. That wooden scoop tool is really great to use here in the hot shop. We use cherry wood. Any fruit woods work really well, excuse me. That's because they have a tight grain structure. They don't have a lot of sap. Cherry wood is just pretty prevalent in the area we live, here in America. I believe this is all the glass we need, so that final gather was how many? 5? 5 gathers of glass? So now we're starting the shaping. So we're smoothing this out with the newspaper here. Jen is blowing into the back of the pipe. George is backing up Michael. And Josie is actually shielding Michael's arm. We have this big ball of glass. It's right around probably 1800 degrees or a little bit more than that. It's giving off a lot of radiant heat. So Michael has a long sleeve shirt on. That's going to help. But those wooden boards in between his arm and that glass helps quite a bit of it too. So Josie's job is very important. Josie has a glove on. So now we'll start using gloves for all of you interested in why we don't use gloves. Gloves do cut down on our dexterity quite a bit. So George might not want to use them because he's on the pipe. But Josie, who's going to be close to the heat, wants to put a glove on, especially while shielding and protecting Michael. We do have Kevlar sleeves we can put on our arms to keep us from burning. We have a face shield. I've never seen anyone with a face shield, but we have them to put things away with into our annealing ovens.
That's good, George.
So go in for a quick reheat. Now George is holding this down. You can hold the glass down to elongate it to make it taller. So gravity can be your friend. Of course, if the glass is too hot, gravity can be your enemy. Or if you don't know how to use gravity, it can be your enemy. We're always fighting gravity, always rotating the glass to keep the glass on the iron. If we ever stop, it falls onto the floor. So we're always balancing, kind of cheating gravity. But when we want to elongate something, make it taller, we'll use it. This is our bench torch. This goes up to right around about 2,000 degrees, sometimes maybe up to 2,200 degrees. This will just add a little extra heat to our glass where we want it to move next. So we're going to heat up that part. So you can even see with this color gradient, that heat gradient, you can see that the colder part is nearer the pipe. So we're going to add a little extra heat to this, but we mostly do that because we're about to add a line into our glass near that section. That line is called our neckline. You can call it a jack line. You can call it a crease or a stress line. But basically that line is going to help us break this bubble off of the iron in the future. So when we're ready to transfer it over onto the punty side, so we can open this up into the beautiful bowl that we are so excited to make, that it will break off easily. So here we go. Michael has a pair of jacks in his right hand. He'll squeeze down that glass. You see George is turning as this is going, as he's squeezing there. Josie is protecting. Lots of teamwork. The line has to be a particular diameter. Each piece is different, of course. The judgment of the glass maker is what determines that width. Really squeezing that down. That's a stainless steel tool, the jacks. The jacks are rubbed with beeswax, so that gliding that you're seeing is aided by that. And already we've got a nice line. We might even go back and reiterate it. We'll see. See some of the smoke coming from the beeswax burning away from those jacks. The jacks are a really helpful glass making tool. There's not a lot of pieces you can make that don't involve jacks. And they come in all types and all sizes. Back into our oven. All right, really puffing this up. We're going for a bowl form. We want a really wide kind of round form, which Need a lot of air for that. You're reiterating that neckline. Remember, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'm here for you all as well. This is a live streamed event as well, so if anybody has any questions on our live stream, please feel free to ask. Back to the oven we go. What we're putting this piece of glass down onto is called a yoke. The yoke is a sliding yoke. With things like this, pieces like this, we really want it to be able to slide because it's heavy. The less time you have holding that, the easier it is for you, of course. Yeah, question. How much do I think that weighs? Now that we have our last gather on it, I would say that the glass itself is probably maybe 10-ish pounds, 10 or so pounds. The pipe itself is maybe 3 or 4. It's a nice heavy pipe. So yeah, I would say about 10-ish pounds. And of course, I mentioned this earlier, but anything away from your center of gravity is going to make it feel harder, quite a bit heavier. So yeah, glass is very heavy. Yeah. Wow, between everyone on the floor, how many years of glassmaking experience do we have? I bet you that Michael and Jen both have right around about 30 years of glassblowing experience. Jeff, I would say the same for him. Josie, probably around that amount too. So yeah, lots of glass experience here on this floor. We're seeing a dream team. It's pretty cool. George, also 30 years of glassblowing experience. Can't leave out George. Yeah, we're up to 150. Look at that. That's a little less than studio glass making in America. Yeah. Or a little more, I should say. So a lot of steps involved in making a lot of glass pieces. Sometimes a lot of it involves different shapes on your way there. So you'll see a number of different shapes to get to that last shape. The faster they turn this, the wider it will get. So the glass can wing itself away from center if it really wants to, if they really want it to also. They're also blowing at the same time, so that makes it taller, so that widens it, that puffs it up. Starting to be able to see some of those Marinis come through here. Those of us here in-house mostly. You can see some of the dots involved with this. So as I mentioned earlier, this is brought on by cane, and so there's a few things you can look at down here. But cane is just a little strip of glass. And these little strips of glass here has color in the inside of it. You can then bundle that like you would bundle like a bundle of pencils or something. Like a bundle of asparagus. And then you can connect 2 irons to that bundle and you can pull it really well thinnish and then chop that up into slivers. And then you can make that into a cup by either rolling that up and kind of squishing it together and then rolling it up. Or you can do a pickup where you pick it on to what we call it, a plunger pickup. It's a lot to go into, but you can attach that on to kind of something that would look like a plunger, the opposite of a cup, and then make that into the cup. So using a dry wooden paddle here to flatten this bottom a bit, if not curve it. They might be flattening that bottom, I'm not sure. Let's see. Nice and round. Very subtly round.
Maybe some.
All right, so we're looking at the side of this. Michael's grabbed a stick of chalk. And he's going to, I believe, draw the punty, a target for the punty. Now remember, this is hot. So look how, for a moment, that's it. That's all you need. That's how hot that glass is. We really want to bring our hand away from that as soon as possible. Again, if it was too hot, he would have put a glove on, but it's okay for that time. All right, so he drew a circle. He basically put the chalk against that area, and then as it turned, it drew a line around the piece. That's our target to land the punty. So the punty is going to be our new handle for the glass. Jen has started a cold core for this and has now gathered a second layer and is creating a ring punty, I believe, or at least a crown punty. We'll see what she'll do here. But that will then connect to the bottom of this piece, and that will be our transferred, or the iron that we will transfer onto. The punty is something that's designed to be removed later on. The pipe will be broken free easily from this connection here, from that, neckline there. But the punty traditionally is designed to fully break off, but this one might be designed to stay on to a point where we're going to add this on. We might make a line in it, and where we make that second line is where we'll break it, and then we can come in later on and cold work that punty off or grind it off later on. We'll see. All right. All of our heats have to go right for this. We're going to get this glass to break. So we're going to purposefully reduce that temperature below about 900 degrees. We're going to get it to cool down so fast that the glass shocks and it breaks. So we want our temperature to be right. The punty temperature also has to be right. We made another landing zone, another target, more of a bullseye. Actually, that might have been the one around it. Okay, Michael says, you ready? She says, yep. Everybody looks like they're ready. These shorter reheats here are called flashes, so we'll set a brief flash, and then we'll come back and we'll add on the punty and do the transfer.
Keep it civilized, George. Let's keep this one civilized.
So here we go. That punty has to be hot enough to where it will stick. Hot glass sticks to hot glass. So 1,000 degrees and above, that glass will be sticky, so of course it will stick. However, we don't want it. Actually, if we're going to keep that bit of glass on there, we do want a pretty good connection. Looks like we are making a line there, so it will be a punty where we can just break that off and leave some of that excess glass onto the piece. So that line he's creating now will be where we will get this to break when it's finished. That's a very sturdy punty, and that's why we make it this way. So we have a lot of connection. We have a very sturdy connection. That's something that's extremely fragile, like a lot of kind of traditional punties or
Yeah.
other things there. So, all right. So we've connected this now. We're going to work on getting it to break free. So this will happen quick. We're going to add something cold to this. It could be steel, it could be water, but something room temperature at glass. When it's at this temperature, around about 1,000 degrees, will shock the glass and break it. And so there's communication between Michael and Jen. Jen has the pipe. The pipe has that hotter glass on it, so it might be moving quickly. A couple of drops of water here and a light tap. Break it free beautifully.
To the hole. To the hole.
Very nice. Successful transfer. All right. So we're off of the blowpipe. We're onto the punty, which means we're no longer blowing this up. But we can, of course, insert something into the lip of this and puff it up. That way, we might not do that. We'll see. But we're on the punty side. The reason we get this glass to break free is so that we have an open vessel to work with. We'll start to pull the sides of this open and get this into that really beautiful bowl shape. Right now, Michael's working outside of the workbench. And Jen will do the turning. And more shielding. So once again, adding more heat to the colder part of the vessel. You saw us break it from the blowpipe. The blowpipe there, that connection's a little colder. So now that we're transferred, even though it is the furthest thing away from the pipe, that first thing in the oven, that last thing out of the oven, it still is on the colder side. Since we wanted to start moving fast, we'll heat that section up. We can use our reheating chamber as a spot heater. So we'll pull most of this bowl out here and just use the top, or kind of right at the lip of that reheating chamber to just heat the lip of the vessel.
Say again? Yes. Yep, we can. About it.
Right outside of those doors is not as hot as
Right
inside of that oven. It seems, of course, right, all of that is hot, right? That whole area is very hot, of course. But right outside those doors is not as hot as inside. So every once in a while, there you go, Jen goes all the way into that oven to reheat everything to make sure it doesn't get too cold. If the Punty gets too cold during the process, it'll crack and it will break and the piece will be on the floor. So once again, maintaining that temperature is very important. In a team like this, it's Jen's job to do that. Of course, Michael is the gaffer. Michael's in charge of this, Michael and Josie. So if one of them says, wow, it's getting cold, we'll heat it up. Jen will go ahead and heat it up. But sometimes having an assistant, as wonderful as Jen and as talented as she is, she knows when the glass is getting too cold. So she'll go ahead and reheat that glass too. Here we go. You can start to see that glow building up on the lip of that vessel. And into our oven we go to reheat this. So this is our live streamed event. This will go on to our YouTube channel after it's filmed. For those of you that don't know about our YouTube channel, it's immense. It's amazing. If you're a fan of glass making, I highly recommend it. We go home and we watch YouTube videos about glass making, especially Corning Museum YouTube videos. So you can also check out a few of Michael and Josie's previous visits here to not only to our side here at the Hot Glass Show, the amphitheater, but also the studio. So they are also here teaching that glass blowing class at the studio. We do live streams there as well. And we have archived videos from over there at the studio, along with the visits from here. With a pair of crimps here, Michael's gonna pull the lip of this vessel out. That does mess the lip up a little bit. It texturizes it. I wouldn't say it messes it up maybe, but it'll pull that out. He's really using something to grab and pull here so that we can elongate it. I believe he's using that to thin this out too. So we're gonna cut some of that glass free. We have Jeff and Anna operating doors. The bigger the piece gets, the more the doors have to be open, and the more the doors have to be open, the colder the hole gets. So having someone there to operate those doors is very handy. Michael Schunke is on Instagram. The handle is the Goblet Ninja. He is truly a goblet ninja. He's one of the best goblet makers. He's great. Check out his work on his website and on his Instagram. Right now he's trimming some of that glass free. So he pulled that out. He's trimming some of that glass free. You can start to see the inside color of this bowl. There's a really great shot of the Marinis as well. Nice. Yeah. Love it. You guys can clap whenever you want. I encourage it. Thanks. Josie Gluck is Josie Gluck on Instagram. And Jen Ellick is Jen Ellick FF on Instagram. And of course, all that comes with the add it before. So you guys know how to use that stuff. They all have websites. Also go to Vetro Vero. Check out Josie and Michael's business. Really amazing stuff coming out of there. They have their own shop. It's in Pennsylvania, Chester County, Pennsylvania. So kind of local.
You on there, George? Oh, no.
Right now, George is helping set up rollers.
Wrong side.
When we open this bowl up, well, I don't want to ruin the surprise. Glass is very fluid when it's hot. So when we open this bowl up, we're going to be turning this thing that's really fluid,
Like in the Old Testament.
wide open, and we're going to need these rollers to kind of help along with that, so we don't have to go back the other direction and kind of flounder this shape that we're going to get. We'll get to that in a bit. Michael's going to start to open this up. Josie there with a paddle there is going to help kind of smush the lip in a little bit, making sure it's even, but also making sure that we can kind of keep a hold of the shape as we're opening it up. More heat.
Less surface area touching.
All right. Okay. Back into the oven. We had a little trash bag melting happening. Don't worry, we got it. Yeah. So look, yeah, even now we can use the rollers. So Jen's turning this piece in the rollers. It gives us a little bit more control on how fast we can turn this without having to go the other direction so quickly with these short bench arms. Of course, they're not very short, they're quite long. But in this sort of instance, it's nice to have longer ones. So we use the rollers, infinite bench rollers. So yeah, that blue, so a lot of the blues, especially these turquoise blues, would just look so green when they're hot. It's a nice green. I'm a big fan of the color green. So it looks nice, but it won't be that color. It'll look even more beautiful. Blue. Okay, so there's our mold. We've unearthed it from the half melted trash bag. I wouldn't say half, a tiny corner melted, but still.
Just check the door, make sure it's going to open. Okay, yep.
We're now
Okay, open up.
able to pay attention to this mold a bit, or we can kind of see it a bit.
I'll give you this second.
Start to open this up and get it ready for the mold. We also have stairs. We'll get those out. With a pair of parchofis. Michael goes in. Those parchofis are wooden dowel rods. More cherry wood. All the wood that we use here is cherry wood. It doesn't have a lot of sap. Tight grain structure, so it burns easily. It's really a great wood to use. When it lights on fire, that's fine. The glass isn't hot enough to stick to it yet.
Do you need something to stand on, Michael, for that, please?
Yes, the steps.
The big stairs.
We're doing food. Yep, I want the same.
We're starting to get there.
Hey, pull that fluffy torch off there. Yep.
Right up against it or what?
All right, so we're gonna add another fluffy torch to this. So we're gonna heat the back of this punty too. Heat the sides as well.
Remember the tacos, George.
We're gonna add more heat to this. More heat. So when this spins out, it's an all or nothing. We want it to go, go, go. So we're gonna add heat where it needs to get, needs to be.
On that stair.
Inside this reheating chamber, we're turning slowly. This is a bowl. It wants to kind of open up on its own. It wants to be really fluid. So we'll turn slowly.
Back. Here.
That other torch and torch in the same spot. Oh, over there. Right across Josie. Underneath her torches. Yeah.
So we see that George is suiting up, which means that he has what we call our silver suit on. And so the silver suit will protect George's whole body from not only the glass he's going to hold in his hands, but from the top half of the oven when he puts this away. So if he's suiting up, I know this is going to be a really fast opening. So the heat has to be right. We're adding more heat to the back, so once again the whole thing is very fluid. Okay. They said a moment ago, one more torch session, and that was that. So this might be the one. So lots happening. Maybe even another one. We'll see. Okay. So we have the mold. We have the stairs to the mold. And we're going to spin this out onto the mold. We're also going to kind of press it down onto it as well. and get a really beautiful curve. Getting this curve is very difficult to do by hand. The mold will help greatly. They're turning very quickly to open this up. We've got the part trophies kind of pulling this open, the boards, making sure that it isn't too tall there. Also keeping Michael from getting too hot. Lots of fire. Lots of fun.
All kinds of room.
This is a pretty large reheating chamber. It's not our largest one, but it's a pretty big one. We've already gotten it pretty big. I do love when we max out the reheating chamber. It's always a lot of fun. You can really see the fluidity of this. Curving the outside of this bowl with those part trophies. Turning, turning, turning.
Torch the back again.
Okay. Real close. Maybe close.
All right. So here we go.
It's going to be a tight fit on that mold. It's going to be perfect. Huh? Oh, on the ankles? Okay.
All right, so we're going to heat this up, get that really, really hot.
Yeah, sorry.
It's going to start to want to spin, and this won't fit back into the oven after it's hot, or after it's finished. So we're going to do this in one shot. So here we go. We're going to heat, we're going to turn. As soon as we're ready, we're going to turn, turn, turn. Spin this out onto our mold here. And then we'll turn it onto the mold. Josie is going to press on it with corks. I'm gonna spin, spin. Covers that whole thing. All right, and back up. And there it is, folks. Beautiful. The next step is to put this away into our annealing oven to slowly cool overnight. A piece like this would probably need maybe 12 hours. So to get this off of that punty connection, We're going to crack that with a drop or two of water. We're going to cool it with a drop or two of water. And a light tap will break that right off. George is going to catch it with Kevlar gloves. A light tap breaks it free. Into our annealing it goes. This will sit here. 12 hours later, we'll see it tomorrow. There we have it. Michael Schunke, Josie Gluck, Jen Ellick, Jeff Mack, George Kennard. Our AV team, we've got Brad, we've got Dan, we've got Jason. Really great job, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us here in-house and online. Have a wonderful day. Thanks so much.